I have been going to Doctors Deldar and Deldar for the same amount of time as my husband, so I think it's about 16 years. And the thing that I've really appreciated about them is, like, no matter what time of day, what day of the week, even holidays, I can call them, and if I have an emergency, be seen right away. In fact, I remember a story once. I felt bad. It was a Sunday morning that we drove my son-in-law's car up to meet Dr. Deldar here on a Sunday morning, and it ran out of gas down the street. And I called him and said, I don't think I'm going to be able to make it because we ran out of gas down by McDonald's, and it was pouring down rain. He said, I'll come get you. So he came and picked us up and then stayed to help us get the car picked up. But that's just the kind of care that we've received, and just a really caring person who will go out of his way to do things. I've heard stories that he actually saw an emergency patient on Thanksgiving morning one day. He was home cooking for a young man who had had an accident and had lost some teeth and it was in horrible pain, and he saw him on Thanksgiving morning. But that's so true. And I have always been really grateful for the kind of care I've gotten, the accessibility. But recently, in addition to just normal dentistry checkups and so forth, I've been experiencing some headaches. And the last time I came in, my lower teeth were all inflamed, and they took an X-ray of it and said it looks traumatized because of the way my jaw was offset. It was pounding. These teeth were pounding up against the top teeth. And Dr. Deldar said, well, you have an option. You can have a root canal, or we could actually go ahead and do the TMJ treatment. Well, I had talked to him about this years ago because I've always had these headaches, but I've just been putting it off and putting it off. But finally, when I had the option of a root canal or the TMJ treatment, I chose the TMJ treatment. I'm ever so glad I did, because I've only been wearing it now for 2 weeks, but already I can tell the difference. No longer are the teeth inflamed, and I can tell immediately that my jaw is much more stabilized. So I don't know where we're going from here, but I'm very happy to have done that. I have had some friends where I ride horses. One of the gals had a lot of trouble, and she went to another physician for a TMJ treatment, and she's had no luck at all. So I'm tempted to tell her to come here and see Dr. Deldar.
Especially in 2 weeks.
I can tell the difference immediately because these teeth down here were so inflamed, tender, they were throbbing, and it was because, from what they could tell, I was pounding. See, it doesn't do it now. That's what I'm saying. My teeth this one tooth is still, I wore braces when I was a kid, when I was in high school, and I wore a retainer and everything was fine, but as an adult I broke it, and my orthodontist isn't even alive anymore. So I just did away with it, but I've just noticed recently that these teeth have started to float, but my whole jaw is starting to move out of balance. So I said, no, I can't. I said, 24/7, I'm a French interpreter. I cannot be wearing something in my mouth. French requires your tongue to go right up against the lower teeth, you know. And pronunciation was my big concern, because he said 24/7. I said, that is not going to happen. I'm an interpreter. But after 2 years and the prospect of doing something like a root canal, I said it's worth a try. And I told him I would never be able to interpret with this in my mouth, and I certainly wouldn't be able to eat with it in my mouth. Well, I've learned to do both. I have to admit, I'm not entirely acclimated to eating things like steak, and I had to totally give up popcorn, which I shouldn't be eating anyway. Bad for your teeth. But I have learned I can interpret with my mouthpiece in. The thing that I noticed was that Dr. Deldar used the computer, and he's had me come in like a good fitting set of contacts. I've had contacts too. I had a pair of contacts. My first contacts were really expensive. I went to an eye surgeon. He fitted me one time and didn't have me come back. And years later, I never could get used to those contacts. Well, years later, I went to a different ophthalmologist, and he had me come back the same day. He had me put one in and wait for an hour and come back, and he tested it, and he said, okay, I want to try a different one. He tried it over and over again until he was satisfied that I had a good fit. And that's the thing that Dr. Deldar did. He had me come in the first day. First of all, he did the whole computer workup, and then he took the molds and sent it out. Then he had me come back 2 days after I'd worn it. Now I put it in, and he had me come back 2 days later. I said, 2 days? He said, I want to see it again. And he put me on the computer, scan again, and he goes, okay, that looks good. And he did some calculation. I don't know what he was doing, but he had me wear this like a directional thing hooked up to the computer. And then he took some measurements and said, okay, I want you to come back in 2 weeks. So I came back in 2 weeks, and that was just the other day. And now he says, okay, it looks really good. I want you to come back in a month and a half. See, that's the kind of checking up on it, I think, it makes the difference. But I do think the extended care and how many times he checked it and rechecked it, and he always put me on to the computer, and he did things, he's calculating it more carefully, I think. Just like my second pair of contacts were much, much better. You're on the fence, I can say this. You will never find a pair of doctors like Dr. Deldar, Doctors Deldar, who are more compassionate, more attentive, and more willing and ready to serve you at any time of the day or night. And I would say give it a try. You can always say, no, that's not for me, if it's not for you. But if you're looking for general dentistry, that's an easy thing. And I also think that the Doctors Deldar all appreciate the importance that dentistry is for your sense of being, your self-confidence. Because my son, Kevin, came to Dr. Deldar after having several rounds of braces, and he had a horrible time. And Dr. Deldar made him a permanent implant. And my son, on his wedding day, said, Dr. Deldar gave me back my smile. And to me, that was the greatest endorsement you could ever hear from your son, who would never speak and never smile because he felt insecure about his teeth. And he is an amazing young man. He's always been an amazing young man, but now he's so outgoing. He joined Toastmasters and won the prize a few years ago. He's a speaker. He's confident and happy. And to me, that was worth everything. And when he was a student at Purdue is when we couldn't find a dentist that could work with him on the weekends because he was in Lafayette. Dr. Deldar would see him on Saturday mornings. So, and now I think that's become a norm for him, but he started doing it with my son, Kevin. And it was wonderful to say, come home this weekend if you need to see a dentist. So.